This is Tanwin from ELL Ecosystem. In this video, you'll be learning how to help students comprehend text at the sentence level by using a process called visible reading. I've used this process to help middle school and high school students comprehend text, and it works best with students who specifically have some social and some academic language, but they can learn using visual and graphic support. The first step is having students only focus on one sentence. That's actually the most important part of this process. This was actually an article that I used with my 8th graders last year in my English class, and they were studying waves in the science class, and I found this article to connect it to the content in science. I'm going to actually use this article to help in this tutorial. The next step in the process is to ask students to only look for the noun, verb, detail in the sentence. And I tell the students that a detail is a who, what, where, when, how, possibly why, right after the verb. I usually give students this sentence: Aladdin wanted to marry Princess Jasmine, to help them really understand what noun, verb, detail is. And I'll say, who's the person in the story? And it's noun, Aladdin. And I'll say, what did he want? Which is the verb. And I'll say, oh, he wanted to marry. So who did he want to marry? Princess Jasmine, which is the detail. This sentence is taken from the CNN article that we just talked about. Take a few seconds to read it and look for the noun, verb, and detail. The main noun, the main verb, and the most important detail. When my students and I used visible reading to break down that sentence, we found out that the most important noun was that researchers, and we asked what did they do, and the students said they developed. And then we asked what did the research developed, and they said the cloak. And together it was a really clear sentence that researchers developed a cloak. The next step in the process is having students write that noun, verb, detail down the way we wrote it, the way we found it, because it's a more comprehensible sentence than the way it is originally in the article. This is a screenshot from a text from a student in my class. He's in the 7th grade, and we were reading a text in science as well. And he was using visible reading to figure out the sentence here as well. And so you could see that he translated some words in Lao, which he needed to do, but he found Caldera is an American famous scientist. So that he was using that same process of looking for the noun, verb, and detail. This is another example from another student who was reading the same article in the same class. And you could see she's a Chinese student, and she looked up the words that she didn't understand, but that doesn't mean she was comprehending the sentence. She had to use noun, verb, detail to look at the whole sentence to put it together. And you could see in the yellow highlight her attempt to do that. And this was from the process that 3 of the students were helping each other to create the comprehension of the sentence. The next step in the process is to continue on to the next sentence or punctuation. I actually don't tell them to go to the next full stop. It could possibly mean the next comma, the next quotation mark, because all punctuations tell us that something's going on. Let's continue with our article example. In the next sentence, it's if an object is wrapped around it, it disappears. And I actually ask students to stop at the comma and look for the noun. I teach students that it is a noun, and it is usually in the previous sentence. We have to go back to that sentence we just read, or paragraph we just read, and find what that noun is. So when they do that, they found that it means cloak. So basically, the visible reading process is just refining the patterns in a sentence. And so I tell them that there are other patterns, such as these two. When there's a first idea, comma, plus an and then a second idea. Students have to first read the first sentence, or the first part before the comma, read the second, and put it together, because comma and tells them to put it together. Here's another one. It's usually we call it a phrase in the beginning, followed by a comma, a noun, verb, detail. For example, when it is cold, comma, I wear gloves. So this is when students say, oh, they take the I wear gloves, and that's the noun, verb, detail. Then they put the phrase in the beginning, and they put it at the end. So it sounds like I wear gloves when it is cold. It's all about helping students find patterns so it's easier for them to understand. There are several other patterns that make visible reading very clear for students, but I just want to show you one last one, and oftentimes it's the text has a he, we, she, they in the text, and it's of course a pronoun, and I have students look for, oh, who's the she, who's the we, who's the they, who's the he in the text. The last step is actually a very important step. It's having them identify the language learning skills that they learn to read text, to comprehend text. This is because we want to make reading in my class a transferable skill in science class, in history class, in all their classes, because they will find the word he as a pronoun in other texts besides the ones that they read in my class. So we just try to have them say, oh, well, you can look for the noun verb detail, or oh, when you find the word it, go back to the last sentence and look for it. Go back to the previous sentence and look for it. We want to make reading transferable as well as visible. I usually end my class by just asking students, what helped you understand the text? I created visible reading from a book that I read called Mechanically Inclined by Jeff Anderson. And his whole philosophy was trying to help students find patterns and try to understand that there are patterns in text, and when we understand them, we can understand the grammar. And I actually used it to help students comprehend text, not just find the grammar and understand how mechanics happens. I actually spent about 1 to 2 months in the beginning of the school year modeling my process of looking for the patterns and looking for the noun verb detail and stopping at the comma and all the other patterns. Once students are familiar with that, I release that process to them, and they sit in their groups and they go over the text and they really try to think about it, because I'm trying to merge oral language with academic language. So in the next few slides, I'm going to show you what that looks like. These are 3 ELL students in my class. One is from Laos, one is from China, and one is from Guatemala, and they are just from really they're at different levels of language proficiency, yet they are using this process of visible reading to talk to each other to find the noun, find the verb, and find the detail. And this is a screenshot of them. They're working. You actually see them using the word another instead of the word additional. And look at the word this. They've actually found the word, what this means. It says homes have bathrooms, and rural means farmer area, and so developing means improve. And so this is what they're doing. They're actually using strategies to make reading more visible. In this image, you see a student writing on the board, and he's writing what he just found out from the sentence that he collaboratively worked with his friends to deconstruct and comprehend. He already found the noun verb detail. Now he's just putting his own word. Then he's doing his Google Drive, and he's going to write it inside the Google Drive so that he remembers it if he needs it. He can write it in Spanish or in English. While on the process of creating this process of visible reading, I learned that language acquisition is like an ecosystem, because it's the interactions between the different parts that create a language-rich environment. When I say interactions, I really mean the structures, the resources, and processes that you use to help students understand social or develop their social and academic language. These are the 8 components of my language learning classroom or ecosystem, and the ones that I voted are the ones that are really inherent to the visible reading process. But the component that matters the most to visible reading is teacher models and students create, because the teacher was modeling the things we do to understand the text. We do it without realizing it or subconsciously doing it, but our students need to see how we do it, and this is why visible reading helps them comprehend the text. I like to think of this channel as a community resource center. So you can be part of the community by giving suggestions on how I can improve this tutorial, telling me how helpful it was for you or not, and also just writing comments about what other resource you would like videos for to help create a language learning ecosystem in your classroom. Another way you can participate in the community is by joining the newsletter. In the newsletter, you'll get resources to help you create your own learning language ecosystem that works best for your students and what works best for your teaching style. Thank you for being part of the English language learning ecosystem.